It began not with fire or thunder, but with a sound so faint most of the world never noticed it. Daniel Hayes did. At 4:12 a.m., in the quiet hum of the NASA Deep Space Network's control center in Goldstone, California, he watched the pattern scroll across his screen. A pulse, soft, steady, mathematically perfect, repeating every 11 seconds. It wasn't cosmic noise. It wasn't a pulsar. It was structured. Someone, or something, was knocking on Earth's door. He took off his headphones and rubbed his temples. The room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old electronics, the kind of air you only found in government facilities that had been running 24/7 since the Cold War. "Tell me you're seeing this," he called across the room. Marie Torres, his shift partner, swiveled in her chair, her dark hair tied back, eyes scanning her own monitor. "Oh my God," she whispered. That's not noise. That's language." Within 20 minutes, the room was full of scientists, analysts, supervisors, all whispering over the stream of data pouring in from the array. By sunrise, Washington knew. By noon, Beijing, Moscow, Paris, and London knew too. And by nightfall, the entire planet was holding its breath. The world had fantasized about this moment for decades. SETI had searched the stars for whispers, philosophers had written books about how we should respond, and movies had painted every possible scenario, from noble enlightenment to apocalyptic annihilation. But when the call finally came, humanity did not panic. They waited. On the third day, the first transmission was decoded. It was not a warning. Not a threat. It was an invitation. "We are the Asvara Collective. We seek to know you. We seek to share what we have learned. We come in peace." The words were clear, elegant, and calm, translated through an AI linguistics model that struggled to keep up with the layered harmonics of the alien speech. Suddenly, borders seemed smaller. Rivals became allies. Politicians who could not agree on anything found common ground in the face of the unknown. The United Nations convened an emergency summit and created the First Contact Committee. Daniel Hayes was chosen as one of the civilian representatives, his decades of experience in systems engineering and signal analysis now placing him at the heart of the most important event in human history. 3 weeks later, they arrived. No telescope on Earth had seen them coming. One moment, the sky was empty. The next, the stars themselves seemed to shift as dozens of titanic shapes emerged from nothingness in low orbit, vast, living silhouettes against the curve of the planet. The ships were not like anything humanity had ever imagined. They pulsed faintly with bioluminescent light, as though alive, as though breathing. Their hulls were smooth, flowing like carved glass. When they passed over cities, people poured into the streets to watch, their faces glowing in the alien light. For the first time in history, every news channel in the world showed the same thing. The landing site was chosen carefully, a wide expanse of Utah's Bonneville Salt Flats, flat and empty enough for the world to watch from a distance. Daniel stood there in the blinding white desert, his badge clipped to his windbreaker, sweat running down his back despite the cool air. Around him were hundreds of representatives, scientists, diplomats, soldiers standing stiffly with hands on their rifles. The President of the United States, Morgan Whitaker, stood at the front of the delegation, her face set in practiced calm. Then the first ship descended. It didn't roar. It didn't thunder. It simply arrived, gliding down silently until its shadow covered half the salt flat. The ground vibrated faintly under Daniel's boots. A seam appeared in the ship's side, and a ramp of what looked like living crystal extruded from the hull. And then they came. 3 Asvara envoys stepped into the sunlight. They were tall, lithe, their translucent skin catching the desert sun like pearl. They had no eyes, no mouths, no visible ears, yet they turned their heads toward every sound, every camera flash, as though seeing with senses humanity could not comprehend. The crowd went utterly still. The first Asvara raised a long, 3-fingered hand and spoke in a voice that was not a voice, harmonic tones that vibrated in Daniel's chest before being translated by the AI and broadcast across the world. "This world is vibrant. Your species is young but promising. We wish for harmony, for mutual growth. May we begin? No invasion. No conquest. Just a beginning." In the days that followed, the HFY became a global obsession. Summits were held. Agreements signed. Technology demonstrations were conducted that left scientists speechless. Compact energy sources that made nuclear power look primitive, medical nanotech capable of regenerating tissue, techniques to grow crops in deserts. The HFY asked for nothing in return. Except for trust. Humanity celebrated. Across the world, there were parades, concerts, children painting HFY silhouettes on walls and waving flags with both Earth and alien symbols. For the first time in generations, it felt like humanity had found something greater than itself. But not everyone trusted them. Beneath a mountain range in Nevada, in a facility that officially didn't exist, an old war room came back to life. General Robert Trent stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at a wall of screens. He was in his 60s, face lined by a lifetime of hard decisions, his chest heavy with medals he never displayed. "Bring Iron Veil online," he ordered. Technicians exchanged nervous glances, then began typing. Across the solar system, in places humanity had forgotten or never known, machines began to wake. Buried in lunar craters. Hidden in hollowed-out asteroids. Parked in orbit around distant Lagrange points, cloaked from every telescope. An entire phantom fleet, invisible and silent for decades, flickered to life. Thrusters warmed. Railguns unlocked from their housings. Warships that had never existed on paper hummed as power flowed through their reactors for the first time in 40 years. Earth smiled for the cameras. But in the dark, humanity bared its teeth. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The peace lasted exactly 38 days. On the 39th, Daniel Hayes noticed something strange. He sat alone in the dimly lit telemetry lab, watching the scrolling data from the HFY medical drone he'd been tasked with studying. It was late, nearly midnight, and the facility was quiet except for the soft hum of servers. Then he saw it. The orbital debris map flickered. Dozens of objects, defunct satellites, old rocket stages, pieces of junk that had been circling Earth for decades, blinked off the grid. Not destroyed. Not deorbited. Just gone. He frowned and replayed the data. The satellites had vanished all at once, like someone had scooped them out of orbit with an invisible hand. Before he could log a report, his secure terminal flashed red, classified. Level Omega. Report to security. His stomach sank. 2 hours later, he was sitting in the back of an unmarked transport jet headed for Colorado. No one spoke to him during the flight. The soldier across from him just stared straight ahead, rifle across his lap. When they landed, Daniel was led deep underground through layers of security checkpoints until he reached a steel door guarded by armed MPs. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of ozone. A vast command center spread before him, banks of monitors, officers moving briskly from station to station, satellite feeds covering the walls. And at the center of it all stood General Robert Trent. He turned as Daniel entered, his weathered face unreadable. "You've seen too much," Trent said without preamble. His voice was calm, almost weary. "Might as well show you the rest." He motioned toward a massive holotable. With a gesture, the display came to life. And Daniel forgot how to breathe. Floating above the table were 12 enormous ships, ghostly outlines, matte black, bristling with weapons. They dwarfed anything humanity had ever admitted to building. "These are the Aegis-class heavy cruisers," Trent said, his voice low, almost reverent. "Project Iron Veil's crown jewel. Built as humanity's insurance policy after the Cold War went off-world. Long-range, nuclear-capable, fully AI-assisted. Each one is designed to take on a fleet." Daniel tore his eyes from the display. "I thought the HFY were here peacefully." Trent's gaze hardened. "Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. But you don't gamble with extinction. We have no idea what they're truly capable of, or why they showed up now, after centuries of silence." He tapped a control and the display shifted, showing a glowing point near lunar orbit. "This is why we woke them up. 2 nights ago, an HFY probe performed a deep scan of the moon. Got a little too close to something we didn't want found. So we removed it." Daniel stared. Removed it? You mean you shot it down? Trent didn't flinch. We can't allow them to know what we have until we know what they want. That's how you survive contact. Daniel left the facility hours later, his head spinning. He had spent his entire career dreaming of this moment, proof that humanity was not alone, that they could be part of something larger. But now he saw the truth: trust was fragile, and fear was everywhere. Things unraveled quickly after that. 3 days later, an Asvara research ship was intercepted near Mars by an unknown vessel. The footage leaked almost immediately, grainy images of the alien craft going dark, then being towed away into the black. Social media exploded. Protests erupted worldwide. Crowds gathered outside embassies demanding answers. Some carried banners that read "Friendship with the Stars," others carried signs warning of alien subjugation. President Morgan Whitaker addressed the nation in a somber televised speech. "We stand at a crossroads," she said, her hands clasped on the podium. "The Asvara have offered peace and progress, but trust must flow both ways. We are investigating this incident fully." But the Pentagon had already gone dark. General Trent stopped returning White House calls. His people stopped attending UN briefings. It was as if two governments were running the planet, one smiling for the cameras, the other sharpening its knives in the dark. Then came the spark that turned fear into fire. An Asvara envoy ship attempting to land near Sao Paulo never made it to the ground. Eyewitnesses saw a flash of light in the clouds, followed by an explosion that rattled windows for miles. The alien craft disintegrated mid-air, raining molten debris over the rainforest. The world watched live feeds in stunned silence. For the first time, the Asvara envoys looked truly alien. At the next summit, the lead envoy stood motionless for a long moment before speaking. Its layered voice, normally melodic, was sharp and cold. "This world hides teeth. If they are bared against us again, we will strike." Daniel was there, standing behind the president, and for the first time he saw fear in Morgan Whitaker's eyes. Military satellites tracked massive energy signatures flaring across the edge of the solar system. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of Asvara ships were arriving. Project Iron Veil moved into full activation. On secret channels, General Trent's voice rang out like a war drum. "All units, Operation Phantom is a go. Bring the fleet to full combat readiness." Across the solar system, the hidden warships came fully awake. Deep in the asteroid belt, cloaked facilities detached their anchors and revealed hangars bristling with strike drones. Around the moon, massive black cruisers powered up their engines, throwing off plumes of silver exhaust that glittered like falling stars. In the darkness above Earth, 12 Aegis-class cruisers formed up into battle formation. Daniel watched the live feed in horrified silence. It was happening. The first contact humanity had dreamed of for centuries turned into a powder keg. And somewhere out there, the match had just been struck. The first shot of the war was fired in silence. It happened in the asteroid belt, where 3 Asvara scout vessels had been running quiet scans of the region for days. Their job was simple: locate the source of the disappearances that had plagued Earth orbit. They found more than they expected. Hidden among the rocks was a ship so black it swallowed the stars around it. A human ship. An Aegis-class cruiser. The scouts hailed it. No response. They attempted to withdraw, their sleek living hulls glowing faintly as they powered up their jump drives. And then, without warning, the cruiser fired. Its railguns spoke first, flinging tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. The lead Asvara ship bloomed into incandescent gas. The other 2 twisted and swerved, their plasma shields flaring blue as they fled, broadcasting wide-spectrum distress calls to the entire system. Daniel Hayes was in the Colorado Command Center when the alarms began to blare. Unidentified engagement in the belt, a lieutenant shouted over the din. "Aegis 1 has gone hot, hostile contact confirmed." General Trent stood at the center of the room, jaw clenched. "Then it begins," he said quietly. Within hours, the Asvara response arrived. Dozens of ships slipped into the solar system through shimmering rifts, long, curved, and gleaming like blades of silver. They formed up in perfect formation, advancing toward the belt. And that was when the ghosts answered. One by one, the remaining 11 Aegis-class cruisers decloaked, sliding from the darkness like predators from deep water. Their matte hulls drank in the light, their engines glowing faintly blue. The solar system had never seen a fleet like this, 12 human warships arrayed in a line, a black wall between Mars and the approaching Isvara fleet. Daniel gripped the edge of the console, heart hammering. "This is madness," he said under his breath. "We can still talk to them. We can still stop this." But Trent's face was set in stone. "No," he said. "This is the moment we prove we won't be ruled. If we back down now, we spend the next 1,000 years on our knees." He nodded to the comms officer. "Transmit fleet order. Weapons free." The command center went silent. Then space erupted. The Aegis cruisers opened fire in perfect unison, launching swarms of AI-guided strike drones that streaked ahead like a school of glowing fish. Railguns fired, leaving streaks of light across the void. Kinetic rods, 8-meter-long tungsten lances, were released from magnetic racks and hurled toward the Isvara formation. The aliens answered with living fire. Bolts of charged plasma flared against the blackness, splashing across human shields like liquid lightning. Clouds of bioengineered drones, like glowing jellyfish, swarmed forward, latching onto the Aegis hulls and dissolving armor plating in sizzling gouts. It was chaos. Aegis 4 took a direct hit to its reactor housing and detonated, vanishing in a blinding white flash that left afterimages on every screen. "4 is gone," a tech cried out. 6 reporting heavy casualties, another voice called. Trent stood tall at the center of it all, shouting orders as if he were back on a battlefield decades earlier. "Bring 9 and 10 to flank position." Overload railguns burned through their lead shields. From the observation screens, Daniel watched in awe and horror. This was no skirmish. This was war. The asteroid belt became a graveyard. Rocks shattered into dust under railgun fire. Missiles weaved through the debris field like hunting animals, detonating in blossoms of white. Humanity fought like it had never fought before. And for a moment, it worked. One Isvara ship broke apart, then another. The alien formation faltered. But the cost was staggering. Aegis 2 lost propulsion and was swarmed by drones until its engines tore free. Aegis 8 was rammed by an alien frigate and went dark, vanishing from the tactical map. Hours passed. The battle raged. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the Isvara fleet began to retreat. They didn't jump immediately. They fell back slowly, shields flaring, returning fire until they reached the edge of the engagement zone. Then their ships vanished one by one into shimmering rifts, leaving the belt littered with glowing debris and the broken remains of ships from both sides. The command center erupted in cheers. "Victory," Trent said grimly, staring at the damage reports. His voice carried no joy. Of the 12 Aegis-class cruisers, only 6 still had full propulsion. 3 were barely holding together. The casualty lists were already thousands of names long. But humanity had stood its ground. Daniel sat down heavily, feeling hollow. Was it worth it? He asked no one in particular. Trent didn't look at him. "It was necessary," he said. In the days that followed, the Isvara did not return. No transmissions. No threats. The solar system fell into an eerie quiet. The wreckage of the battle was slowly catalogued and cleared. The surviving Aegis cruisers went dark again, retreating to their hidden drydocks for repairs. To the public, President Whitaker declared it a defensive victory, a proof that humanity would not be bullied. Some believed her. Some didn't. The world was divided, half celebrating the Phantom Fleet as saviors, the other half cursing them as warmongers who had doomed Earth to an endless war. Daniel resigned from the program 2 weeks later. He couldn't reconcile the joy he had felt the day the Isvara landed with the nightmare he had just witnessed. One night, months later, he stood outside his cabin in the mountains of Colorado and looked up at the stars. They seemed colder now. The galaxy knew Earth was not defenseless. The galaxy knew Earth would fight. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, far beyond the reach of human telescopes, the Isvara were rebuilding, stronger, angrier, preparing for the day they would return. And when that day came, the Phantom Fleet would rise again. Not for glory. Not for conquest. But because Earth had shown its teeth. And now, there was no turning back.